everybody, Matt Michaels here on the Vegas Badboyz of Podcasting with Sin City Steve, our honorary guest bad boy who's been filling in for a number of shows recently, Rob Bussoleri from all the way from New York City, right next to Yonkers.
I'm in Vegas now.
Oh, well, I'm just saying, because New York City never leaves you. That's the whole thing. We can tell. And of course, our esteemed WWE insider, Travis. And we this week got a nice little, I don't know if it was a surprise from the WWE as much as something that was going to be happening here. And that was a big amount of cuts this year. And some of the guys who got cut, Mustafa Ali, Rick Boogs, Elias, Riddick Moss, Top Dollar, Shelton Benjamin, Emma, Dolph Ziggler, Dabba-Kato, Dana Brooke, Mansoor, Mace, Quincy Elliott, Shanky. I don't even know who the hell Ulisa Leon is. Kevin Ventura Cortez, Jiro, Brooklyn Barlow, and with Bryson Montana. All right, so for all those people who are just bitching and complaining about WWE releases, you know it's bad when you can fucking look at the list and go, who? To some of these people. So, but Rob, you brought this up. Let's start with your thoughts on some of these releases.
I was most surprised about too Mustafa Ali, because you mentioned it earlier in another broadcast. They were setting him up for a storyline where he was going to fight for the North American title and take on I'm blanking out right now. Dominic Mysterio. He should also be let go. No, I kid. He's a heat magnet. But Mustafa Ali, they couldn't figure out what to do with him. That's the problem with Mustafa Ali. They couldn't find a vehicle for him. And he's been floundering around forever trying to figure out what to do. Rick Boogs was a no-brainer. He serves no purpose. He's just a big guy that looks like, he looks like Freddie Mercury. Okay. The one that I was kind of surprised, and he hasn't been doing much, was Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler was one where he was a company lifer. I mean, I remember all the way back since when he was being represented by Vicky Guerrero and he was a world heavyweight champion. He was a WWE lifer. And for that matter, whatever happened to, and maybe he already was released, Bobby Roode, Robert Roode, whatever became of him.
Roode's a backstage producer now.
Right. So I'm kind of surprised that they would. Maybe that was one of the scenarios by which he said, hey, just get me out of my contract. There's nothing more for me to do here. Emma, she'll go back to the Indies or she'll go back to Impact Wrestling or something and maybe have one more run before she's gone for good. And she'll come back as Tennille Dashwood. But a lot of these other guys, Dabba-Kato, who is wrestling with Apollo Crews as his general, Dana Brooke, manager, she just flexes her, biceps. The Maximum Male Models, that was dumb. I don't know why WWE has to keep going with this kind of just
because they made two fucking superstars out of that group with the two people who managed those two idiots. So I think that you got to for everything that's shit, there is a silver lining on some of this.
LA Knight was LA Knight on NXT, per what I always say about NXT, how worthless it is. He was LA Knight on NXT, becomes Dupree or whatever the hell, Max Dupree, and then goes right back to LA Knight. and it was dumb. And
of course it was dumb, but he was on the verge of being fired. Remember that. The guy saved himself. That's the whole thing. The thing is that Maxine and Max, out of this whole stupid situation, went on to be people who are fucking marketable. Mace and Monster,
maybe she has about a year and a half left before her Lana days are over.
Yeah. We know how you feel about the women wrestling, Rob.
No, I feel about the women wrestling that it's better than it's allowed to be. That's my feelings on women's wrestling. It's better than they allow it to be. So she is another TNA character, and she gets a spinning heel kick. It's a winning moment for all women everywhere. No, it's ridiculous. She is another TNA character. She'll be gone in a year and a half.
Steve, give your thoughts on these cuts, man. Because John made a great point. You got to remember, it is a business. That is what the WWE is. Losses eventually happen because you have to help the bottom dollar, or in this case, cut the top dollar.
Exactly.
But with any set of roster releases, you have to look at the talent who gets cut and honestly ask yourself, could you see this talent eventually headline WrestleMania? If the answer is no, then they are expendable. Absolutely, 100%. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree completely. I think that one thing that we need to keep in mind is this is always going to be a thing because of the environment that WWE has created. And I'm not saying that as a slight on WWE by any means. They've built a machine. They've genuinely built a machine that they can constantly throw talent into it and they can see what comes out of it. And if you're not at the standard is the standard and you will be let go. There were not really too many names that surprised me out of this list. We talked about Ali. He had asked for his release previously. For one reason or another, it wasn't granted prior to this. Boogs is saying that he was let go because of backstage politics. Hopefully we can get some clarification on exactly what that is or what those politics were. I mean, the thing that kind of stands out for me is, are you guys aware that Dana Brooke was actually under a WWE contract for a longer term than Hulk Hogan during the Hulkamania era?
Yep.
Sit back and let that sink in. Okay. Yes, this is something that's going to constantly be happening. And as John said, it's a business. Of course, we can take a look at this list and we can speculate on where people are going to go. Obviously, Dolph Ziggler stands out as somebody that could easily wind up in AEW tag teaming with his brother. You've got, Emma could wind up in AEW, but I think if she goes back to working anywhere, it will be an Impact. I personally would love to see Shelton Benjamin as an agent or a producer in the business. So wherever he lands, if he can, lend his talents that way, I think that would be the absolute best approach for him to take. I think that this is the time where these folks need to look at this as not a I'm done, but a what's next.
Well, speaking of that, Travis, it's interesting because as we know, some of these cuts were wishes granted. Was Cena? Is that why he was brought back for the last couple of weeks?
To grant Ziggler's wish,
right?
There are actually, obviously me knowing dealing more with Orlando than anything above. So these NXT names were few were not surprising. The biggest name on the list, and I'm sorry guys, I have to do this real quick. Actually, hold on one second. If someone wants to take over for me, just for a quick second. Hey, how you doing?
All right, so that is a point. The the NXT names. He's going to get to them in one moment here. But if you look at some of these NXT names, like I said, those are some of the ones that you go, who? And I think that it also, sometimes you forget that it's a fucking development still.
Should NXT go back to streaming?
No. I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
They can sell ad space, as was just reinforced.
Okay. I know this may shock a lot of people. I'm sorry, I was hungry. Yulisa Leon is the biggest surprise for me. And I know she's going to release a statement probably in the next 90 days. She did ask for her release. The company did grant it. I believe that she may eventually come back. But Yulisa was the first Mexican female to ever be signed by WWE. She started to get a push, no surprise, when a certain Mexican female in another company won the title last year. So yes, she was going to put the rocket on her because of what Thunder Rosa was doing elsewhere. I am completely shocked. I've been asking around all day about this, and I'm just getting the same answer of she asked for her release. She did post a statement a few hours ago. Her father, she is a second generation talent. Her father wrestled in Lucha Libre. She was a power lifter, a very successful power lifter. She was in a tag team. Actually, they used her in a four-person tag at the last pay-per-view for NXT, which was a match that almost stole the show. Because of who was in the match with Nathan Frazier and Tyler Bate and so on. So, to me, she's the biggest surprise because she's young. She's got the look athletically. She's almost like a Latin Bianca Belair. So that was the most shocking, especially seeing the company trying hard to keep going to Mexico. And you had the story of the first ever Mexican-born female signed to your company. So I think the door is open. I think there's going to be possibly a comeback at some point in her career. She may have some stuff she's got to deal with personally that we'll find out soon. Ziggler, Shelton, not a shock because it was more or less how long have people been under contract, and we're in that phase of the company of long-term contracts. Let's see where we're at. I believe one was 47 and one is 44, 45. So you can see about that. Ziggler going to team with his brother obviously makes a lot of sense. I guess due to drama of his brother's nemesis no longer in that company. Anything's possible.
Exactly.
Wait, Travis.
Hmm?
Did you just kind of hint that the reason they got rid of Dolph Ziggler is because CM Punk's coming in and they didn't want that middleman with the heat? I think that's what you just said.
Punk said only one Nemeth or no Nemeth around me. No Nemeth. So, I was, Ziggler is to an extent shocked, even though with the long-term contract and everything, because one, he was a company guy like The Miz that you were sending out to do all of the media. But at the same time, I think with a major promote company like Endeavor on their side now, they may have their own media, ideas and so forth. Ziggler was one that they always, especially with the political year coming up, he was one that they always sent to the political conventions,
Yep.
Democrat and Republicans. So that was very interesting. He was on Fox News a lot. So that was interesting. But like I said, the biggest shock to me was Yulisa, and so we'll see. Ali, like I said, I'm shocked about Ali only because I would have thought maybe they would have let him go through the pay-per-view next week. I mean, it wasn't like the pay-per-view was a month away. The pay-per-view 7 days away that he was already booked on, and they pulled that out, away. So that's very interesting. The title is being defended tomorrow on Raw with Dragon Lee, so that's going to be a interesting thing for where that North American title. Do they go with Dragon Lee? How is Dragon Lee going to handle this? His first major TV appearance. in front of a large audience for WWE. So that's going to be interesting where they go with the North American title, since it was actually in a storyline. Dana Brooke was currently in a storyline on NXT.
Yep.
She was forming a tag team that, people, it looked like she was about to turn heel. So there was another person who was in the middle of a storyline that was released. Same with Matt Riddle, who was, technically in two storylines with Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton, who was released. So the intriguing part is they had no problem releasing people who were in the middle of storylines. Usually it's people who are just floundering, which, most of the roster, that list was. But the fact that, one person was going for a title within 7 days of his release, and the three others were actually in the middle of major storyline, well, not major, but, compelling storylines, TV time storylines. It wasn't like these were just storylines on the network. These were storylines on television. So,
but they did that with Aleister Black and Big E. They were in the middle of a feud and they cut Aleister. Not new for WWE to do that.
Yeah, but
not new, but these were with Big E and Aleister, it was going somewhere, but you still had about a month or so to get to that spot. Dana was a week away from turning. Mustafa Ali was a week away from getting a title match. Drew and Randy were every week. So, or Drew and Riddle. So, that's where that was a very interesting part.
I think John just made a point, Travis, that I think this is what I was going to ask. Endeavor was probably like, we're paying you how much? You complain all the time. There's the door. And
I think there's going to be a lot of that. And I can honestly say that I was aware of a number, and as of the most recent release of yesterday, that number has not been reached yet. So we could be going into week 2 of releases, which I think is very likely, because the number was high. I was shocked about this number, but then it's like, they got to do what they got to do. And, I'm still trying to be convinced of how B-Fab and Ashanti still are there and Top Dollar is not. I know he had no major heat, backstage, and a lot of it was, presented on Twitter and so forth. But it's interesting if they actually do keep those two, even if they keep them for 6 months, past Top Dollar. So we'll see. Is Swerve still? Is he still singing over there? Is he need a Hit Row reunion? I heard.
Please no.
I heard NSYNC was possibly reuniting. Could we get a Hit Row reunion tour?
Oh, please.
Well,
no.
That's
on TBS.
That's a great point, Travis. You did say
or is it TNT?
You did say hi. So Steve, speaking of high, how many of these guys does Tony Khan just fucking go and just sign for no fucking reason?
It's one of those things that I would love for the answer to be a couple, but unfortunately, I think he's gonna go out and sign half a dozen. I could see people like Ziggler. They could take a chance on Mustafa Ali as well. It's just one of those things. I mean, it really just depends on, what kind of a direction that they really want to go. I would love to think that Tony would be smarter with his money this time around, especially because this crop of free agents isn't exactly alluring. I would love to see Matt Riddle in AEW though. All things considered, I know. I would enjoy seeing him in AEW.
I think Riddle. I think out of that list, Shelton will get a. I'm sorry. Can you take over real?
Yeah, for sure. I would love for Shelton to be, like I said, backstage. Give him an agent or producer gig with AEW. I mean, that's the type of role that he should embrace at this point. And I think that it's something that he could do extremely well too.
I would say with Riddle, I would rather him end up on Impact for a while or put him on Ring of Honor where he can get some polishing if you're going to do that at all. The obvious choice with Ziggler is to pair him up with his brother. That's the only one that's a slam dunk simple one. How far they go with it and how much chemistry the two have is to be seen if that should be a reality. Some of these other guys, Dabba-Kato, Brooke, great. She's been with the company a while. Great. They try to do stuff with them. I can't see a place for them. Impact Wrestling keeps coming to mind because it's a chance to reinvent yourself.
But that's a great point, and that is this. The level of talent that's been released is Impact Wrestling level talent.
Yep.
These guys can be great in Impact Wrestling, but if you go and put them on bigger stages, they're nothing but early mid-carders at best. So
I think I see Emma being allowed to do a one-time appearance at the Australian show in February.
Yeah.
I think
that should happen. For
maybe
sure.
New Japan.
Whether it's a there she is in the front row, or they do some type of all Australian women's match. I really see her at the show in Australia in February. Beyond that, I don't see her with the company at that point. Her tweet was so amazing, like the fact that she tweeted the promotion of the event, and then it was like 10 minutes later, she's like, "Oh, I just got cut. Never mind." I was like, "Wow, what the what timing was that?"
But isn't that
Shelton? Everyone's saying producer, but really, what does the producer in AEW do? Can we answer that? And I don't mean that as a knock, but no, I don't mean that at all as a knock. But you got Chris Hero there, you got Dean Malenko, and every time I hear shit, it's like, oh, the talent doesn't listen to us. So it's like, I kind of wanted to see Shelton go to NXT and work with Braun Breaker and Von Wagner and Ali and people like that. I wish that could have happened. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I think you guys may be having part 2 of this conversation a week from today.
Right. Cedric Alexander is the top of that list.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it.
But who else would you say is on the chopping block? Besides Cedric Alexander, are there any other names that just leap off the page?
I think you're going to get a few more of these unknowns, these people who've been on Level Up. I believe the current number at the Performance Center is about 150. Given that you do have another NIL class coming in, you just had tryouts with indie wrestlers happen over the past week. So that's back on, the schedule, giving indie wrestlers tryouts. So you can't keep adding without subtracting. So, and that's going to go for main roster also. Who on the main roster? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's people I could probably name, but I probably shouldn't right now.
Well, one of the things that John just said in the chat is maybe part of these roster cuts is to free salary space for a Will Ospreay, or dare I say MJF.
Well, thank God neither one is coming to the company. So, and it's I don't follow Ospreay. I haven't seen much of his work, so I can't really comment on. But just from what I've seen, heard, how many stars he gets per year, per day, per hour, whatever, I don't feel he's a WWE wrestler. And that's not a bad thing. And that's not a bad thing. Some people just don't fit the mold of a sports entertainer. Some people are actually pro wrestlers and not sports entertainers. And there are two different things. Those are two different jobs. And a lot of people can't comprehend that. And if you can comprehend that, you'll understand and you'll be successful in the industry. But if you can't comprehend the difference between being a sports entertainer and a pro wrestler, you're going to be stuck, and you're going to end up on Netflix in 10 years saying how your coach is, is cool, but the owner of the company is a dick, and you're wrestling in front of the Cincinnati State Fair or wherever the fuck you are.
Yeah, well, that company just got more exposure than AEW gets on a fucking Saturday night. So let's just say that Ohio Valley hit the jackpot with that one. All right, there's going to be a lot of discussion on this. Like I said, possibly more coming up next week. Let's talk a little bit of Chris Jericho on AEW dealing with backstage issues, people focusing on negativity and downplaying positivity. Jericho appeared on Busted Open this week, and while CM Punk was not mentioned by name, there was a discussion on how the backstage issues at AEW All In overshadowed the historic Wembley Stadium show for some fans. Jericho commented on if he was frustrated by how quick the incident between Punk and Jack Perry hit the internet. And Jericho, this is great. Steve, you gave me this article with 90 freaking pop-ups where you can't read stuff.
There really wasn't much in the article. It's basically, it's like, hey, look, there's a lot of problems backstage. We're trying to be positive, and anything that positive that does happen gets overshadowed by a few bad events behind the scenes. That was the gist of what he said. There wasn't really, he didn't go into much detail because, Jericho's a professional. He doesn't want to, expose too many direct names. So he kept it very vague. And it was kind of like saying, hey, look, there is negativity backstage, but not enough that it should ever downplay what we've accomplished as a company. And they're saying 81,000, 8,000 of those seats being giveaways by Tony Khan. So they still filled out Wembley. And what happened? They did. It's suck it up, Buttercup. It happened. Oh, it didn't happen the way I wanted it to. Well, who gives a shit? Numbers doesn't make you a mark. It means numbers happened. Suck it up. So he that was the whole point, that something big happened, and it should not have been overshadowed by CM Punk.
Since we're talking about numbers, 3 years ago, 20,000 in Arthur Ashe. Last year, 14,000 in Arthur Ashe. This year, barely hit 10,000 in Arthur Ashe. Let's we're going to talk about numbers. With Jericho's mad at, how things leak out. Be mad at your fucking talent then, and your employees. Because for certain journalists to have the Punk Perry situation 5 minutes after it happened, I mean, no fan leaked that shit out. That's inner office dealings. So stop trying to downplay that there's no drama. Worry about who on your roster is leaking this shit so quickly. So whatever, Jericho.
Well,
stupid idiot.
I'm
already blocked by him, so it don't matter.
I can kind of read now. Although, Steve, like I said, there's a lot of pop-ups, and Magic Mike keeps coming up for the live show here in Las Vegas. It's kind of weird.
What version did you click on, Steve? I didn't get that.
Hey, there you go, man.
But Jericho said, it's wrestling, though, man. It's only rock and roll. I think people like to focus on the negative. I remember when I got into the fight with Goldberg in Milwaukee at a WWE event in 2003. It was out on whatever version of the internet was then 10 minutes later. So it's not like this is the first time there's been incidents backstage. It happens. I just think now with social media that people want to jump on the negative. He says, we know the issues have been rectified, but the point is, it's like there's so much positive things going on, and those things are always kind of a little bit downplayed, but it's the negative that gets focused on. I know what's going on in the locker room, and we know what areas we need to work on. I mean, negative press is negative press. So, Steve, this is something that you brought up story-wise. Steve, does it fall on Dave Meltzer going and putting out this shit to get people to click on his fucking shit? I mean, is that what it comes down to? The reason negative is focused on is because that's what people will click on. They don't want to hear about how great things are going. They want to hear how shitty things are going.
So without you bring up a really good point. And to be honest, I hadn't even thought about that as being the angle that I would take coming out of, reading this story. But yeah, there has to be something to do with these news outlets and, the publishers of these websites, because they know that there's an inherent bias and an us versus them type of a mentality between wrestling fans. It's something that we talk about ad nauseum on this show almost every single week, how there's tribalism, anti-AEW, anti-WWE. We're all guilty of it to some degree. But the fact is that, I do think that Jericho brings up at least a good point, even if he's saying it for a bit of a PR reason. And that's all that we ever hear, seemingly, is the negativity. Of course, there was, all of the stuff that came out about All In. Quite frankly, All In should have been the biggest celebratory weekend in the history of the promotion. And instead, we had man-children getting pissed off at each other and just being very, very juvenile and detracting from what should have been the biggest weekend in the entire company's history. It's really frustrating to see as a fan, especially if you have a vested interest in a particular company and you want them to succeed, which quite frankly, us as wrestling fans, even if you're not an AEW fan, newsflash, surprise, you should want AEW to succeed because it's going to generate more positions for people to work in this industry. It's going to make the products better as a result because you have that element of competition. No matter how much each other promotion wants to say that, oh, well, they're not competition, or if they try to downplay that, that AEW is not trying to be competitive with WWE as they did when they first started business. It's something that, yeah, they need to make their intentions known. And just, I can't get over how many times individuals in that company allow themselves to be put over the brand itself. And it all starts at the top with Tony Khan. We've mentioned it on this show, but it's coming to a head, and I really don't want it to cost them money. I don't want it to cost them rights deals. I don't want it to cost them the company itself, because all of those things could be gone in just the blink of an eye.
That's why Cody said he wanted out, and he was glad to not be there anymore. When he was the face of the company for those first 2 seasons, there was no Tony Khan at first. It was Cody Rhodes as the face. So I'm not an idiot. I realize something's wrong when you have your own brand and you're the ambassador to that brand and you're in the ring, and then you decide it's too much for me to deal with. I mean, if you're talking about leaving a company in that scenario for the possibility of getting a long-term story where you may be the champion, then there's something wrong with the company if it's gotten to that point. But it's like you said, they need to succeed. We need, is there going to be a Monday Night Wars type scenario again? No, I don't think it's ever going to be that scenario. But if we're getting close to 1 million viewers every week on a Dynamite, I want that. I want WWE to have to take a second look at the other players in the field and go, all right, we need to step up our game a little bit. Because
but is that not a myth? Because that's what keeps, everyone who wants to point the finger at WWE and go, this is going to make them better, is full of shit, because they're going to do whatever the fuck they want to do.
But it's bad in the sense that we were told for years there is no other wrestling out there. It's just Blue Brand.
There was. You had fucking Impact / TNA. You had Ring of Honor. You had New Japan. The wrestling was there. This fucking mentality of us versus them wasn't. And that's the thing. And I'll tell you, CM Punk is the fucking example of this. I come back and I say, I love this so much. I sat on my ass for 7 years because no one would pay me the fucking money I wanted because no one had $1 billion fucking dollars like this asshole does. And this guy is fucking up this shit. And everyone runs to the defense of the company. It's not about the fucking wrestling or the company as a wrestling company. It's about the megalomaniac who is running this shit. And that's a problem because he's the one who creates this whole we're against them bullshit. And they don't even fucking pay attention, except for the few times they like to take shots every now and then. Travis, is it true that all this falls on Thunder Rosa?
Of course it does. You know, I mean, I still think she's locked in the bathroom in whatever arena that is that Britt Baker is still trying to find her in, you know? But
is she injured?
For those asking, it was a grilled cheese with grilled onions. I don't eat meat, so it's the only thing I like at In-N-Out. It's funny how we live in an era right now, September 2023, where if you really sit and think, if the two heads of the company were taken away, those companies may run a little bit better.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw, you know, Vince step away for a bit and Hunter took over, and you saw how that happens. And let's just be honest, Tony has to. He can own it, he can run it, he can dress up and cosplay as Orange Cassidy all he wants, and do the Daniel Garcia dance to an extent.
Brian Danielson.
There needs to be. I don't even know if it's Brian Danielson. I like people are like Brian Danielson, but I'm like, how? Why? Like Hunter actually had to work his way. You know, you can't just put someone because they're a great wrestler and have them run a company. That if you're a great wrestler, that doesn't mean you know how to run a company. You know, Hunter actually had to work in the office before getting NXT. And then he actually had to run NXT, and he ran NXT to an success, going to NBA arenas and selling out 12, 13,000 people. And then got into the WWE production, you know, office standpoint and ran that. Tony needs
the time. They don't have that time. They need
Tony needs. I know Tony needs an office, and I don't mean a building where he sits in, and he needs an office staff. He doesn't need people who are relatives of wrestlers. He doesn't need people who are friends of wrestlers to get positions that they have no qualifications for. None. He needs people who actually know what the fuck they're doing. And it sucks that there are some few, you know, from the past that have and still currently go and bash Tony weekly, because I think sometimes they could actually be helpful, you know, to his product to an extent. But you know, he got conned by CM Punk. You know, it sucks because yes, there does need to be a number two, a strong number two, not a distant number two. There needs to be a strong number two. And we are currently with AEW being a strong but distant number two. Let's forget about these ratings. Let's forget about trying to hit 1 million. Let's forget about trying to hit 900,000 consistently. Let's worry about why a fucking house show from the other company is selling more tickets than your television show. Your number one TV show each week is selling not less, but way less tickets than a WWE house show. Last night in Palm Springs, WWE, 9,000 for a house show. You know what the attendance was in Colorado last week for Dynamite? Barely 3.
Yeah.
How does a product with no cameras, no Roman, no Cena sell out? And a product with Daniel Bryan and Moxley and everyone can only pull 3,000. That's ridiculous. That's where the issue lies. You know, make it look like this is the place. WWE right now, you can turn on, you know, Monday or Fridays, or even to an extent NXT. And it looks like the cool place to be. You may not like the storylines, you may not know the talent, but you can show someone a certain segment of Raw, SmackDown, or NXT where the fans are hype, and it looks like, damn, that looks like a party. No wonder there's that many people in that building. When Jey Uso comes out and does the hand gestures, and they do that wide shot of the whole arena doing it, that looks fucking cool. When Roman goes out there and the entrance is 18 minutes long, but he holds that finger up and the pyro is going off like crazy, that looks fucking cool. When you have 300 people in a small studio chanting NXT or Dragunov or whatever, that looks fucking cool.
Well, now, wait a minute. Now, you had a bunch of layoffs in WWE from their backstage or offices. Would it be beneficial for Tony Khan to pick some of those people up? People that were redundant.
First of all, a lot of those people were in the office, so you really don't know what they did, or he has no clue. I mean, if you want that question answered, of course it would be beneficial. But how come last year when Ryan Katz and Road Dogg got laid off, neither one of them got a fucking AEW job? And I can tell you what, one for sure, if not both, but I can tell you one definitely reached out to AEW and did not get a response. But yet,
you're talking about Road Dogg, right?
Some guy can create a fucking, whatever he created on Twitter about how many minutes black wrestlers have gotten on AEW, and now he's on the fucking AEW payroll. No offense to certain people. Like I said, maybe we need to stop hiring fans or friends and relatives who have no experience of what they're doing, and maybe hire people who actually have experience of what they're doing. When Ryan Katz was a free agent last year, that was probably one of the biggest, mistakes that Tony Khan did not pick up.
Yep.
Because if you know what he does in NXT, I would have been on the phone instantly. So I can't say if who got released as far as office and what they did, but if there's someone of substance and if they reach out, I would make sure, and that's the thing. Where are people sending their resumes to? Is it going directly to Tony Khan and he's just so fucking busy he doesn't see the emails? Is there an HR department that's not following up on aspects? So that's
It's the truth. It's the truth, though. It's the truth, because their office departments, there isn't coherency, and that's part of the problem. And
people mention about Mega, the lawyer and stuff, and it's like, I think technically, isn't she still the lawyer for the Jaguars? So it's like this time of year, how busy is she? We're in NFL season. I'm sure there's legal shit going on daily you have to watch out for. And now trying to figure out what this wrestling company is.
I will say this about Tony Khan is he's always treated it as this is a side project I have with Dad's money versus I have to make this company work. It reminds me a lot of, unfortunately, TNA with Dixie Carter, where you treat it as a pet project and not the project. And
I feel opposite of that. Right. I feel he loves this company. I really feel he loves his company, and this is his full 100% project. But he just doesn't know how to run a business, because technically he doesn't run the Jaguars. He's affiliated with the Jaguars in a very, 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 very high position, but he doesn't run the Jaguars. So what does he actually know about running something? He's a fan. He's a fan that went to PWG, that watched NXT, that loved wrestling. And you give anyone out here, any four of us, anyone, the amount of money that he has and create a company, we're gonna make a shit ton of mistakes. The same way that he's doing. He's just under the microscope harder because he talked so much shit when he created the company, and he should have just kept quiet. Well, and just said, "This is what I'm going to do, and I have a TV deal, and I'm just gonna go there. But he talked a lot of shit, and he still does to this day. You know,
and
don't go out there and talking shit, and then you get all pissy when someone calls your promotion secondary, because the way a lot of shit has been going down the past couple weeks, it looks secondary.
And that's a great point John just brought up. According to TK, he worked 80-hour work weeks before Collision had its debut episode. Now it's more, according to him, which is the statement he just made this fucking week, which is probably one of the most ridiculous fucking things you could say to make yourself look like an ass clown.
I hope, you know, I really want him to succeed. There's a lot of people over there who have jobs who really needed jobs. A lot of people getting exposure that shouldn't have exposure. They still need training, but it is what it is. But, you know, the thing with Tony, and I think we've gone off topic of what the topic was, but, you know, this has always been my thing. Why are we lighting people on fire and then instantly putting them out?
Right.
Wardlow is my biggest question. Where the fuck is he injured?
Absolutely.
No, is he injured? Because I don't know. If he's injured, then you know I won't bring him up.
No, not at all.
But if he's not injured, where the fuck is Wardlow?
Yeah.
Didn't Sky Blue get hot for a second? Didn't Willow Nightingale get hot for a second? You know.
But that's the thing, Travis, is that, you know, like Sky Blue is a perfect example of someone who you give a little push to, and then she's losing to Julia Hart this week.
Yeah. It's like I looked at the card for Seattle next week, and I still only see one women's match on there. And like I tell everyone, look at NXT between 8:35 and 8:55. There's more women on NXT between those 20 minutes than Tony puts on in the whole week. That's sad. That's really sad. You know, looking at the pay-per-view next week and seeing only one women's match, knowing that someone's coming back soon, and whose spot is she going to take?
Right.
Exactly.
You know, and how long is her spot going to be there? You know, so it's like, wait a
minute. I got one problem with that analogy. This is just my mindset. Is the point of being on NXT to be on NXT, or is it to get your way to the main roster? And if that's the case, most of those people won't make it to the main roster anyway. And if they do, they're going to be gone within the year. I mean, they did that to Keith Lee. He got to the main roster, and he was Bearcat within a year and a half.
Okay.
So, he's doing so much better in AEW right now.
And in that year and a half, at least he was being viewed by NFL ratings of 1.2 million people compared to
but you want to be in the company for a long time. And I'm not saying that AEW is doing a great job with them. That's my point. Is if we're going to talk about NXT and keep it within the sphere of WWE universe, if the purpose of NXT is to not stay on NXT, then those people are all going to fail invariably and be on this chopping block that we're talking about in the first place.
You're going to find more people to fail through NXT, but the ones who are successful are extremely successful. I believe 2 NXT stars main evented WrestleMania female match this year. I believe 2 NXT stars females main event at WrestleMania last year. You know, I believe Keith Lee was a tag team champion with someone else, and they still have not had a match after a year in AEW. So no one can compare Keith Lee's WWE run or his NXT run to his AEW run, because he did way more under the WWE umbrella compared to what he's doing in AEW. And then at this point, we live in a life where I no longer compare WWE to AEW, because you can't, because they're 2 different realms. I compare AEW to NXT, and we're almost at the point where we're just going to have to start comparing WoW or Impact to AEW, because I mean, realistically, let's just be honest. You know, it's right now. It's what's NXT and AEW doing? You cannot say Raw or SmackDown anymore. You just honestly can't, because they'll just pull shit out of their ass, and there's The Rock and Pat McAfee in the middle of the ring out of nowhere. You know, so it's like it's really NXT, but I mean, also with NXT and the amount of people that are in the Performance Center right now, they're all NIL stars. So maybe a lot of them don't even know the difference between being on NXT and being on the main roster. They hear things of being on the main roster, you make more money, but their goal right now and their checks still say WWE on it.
So to them, they're WWE
You
superstars.
said it's in NXT. Do you mean and I just want to, I'm just asking, you think the quality on NXT is better than what's coming out in Raw and SmackDown?
The quality of
the NXT programming, the storytelling, the writing, the growing skills of the talent that's going through there. Do you think that what's happening on NXT, that program is a better quality than Raw or SmackDown by and large?
In 2023 overall, yes. Because on SmackDown, all you had was the Bloodline. That carried the show. That sold the tickets. Can you tell me anything else besides the Bloodline on SmackDown? No.
No, I said that since City can verify. I said that last week.
Can you tell me anything besides Cody Rhodes on Raw? Maybe
they're revolving everything around
Judgment Day at this point, but Judgment Day just got hot because you got to remember about 3 months ago, it looked like Judgment Day was like maybe fading away, but they got hot.
But you also have to credit Sammy and KO on both shows, and those two are
but I circle that as I group that in with Bloodline because Bloodline needs someone to dance with, so that's who their dance partners were for the most part. And
so we're seeing that with the same thing with Judgment Day. They're dancing with them now. But John just brought up a really good one, Imperium, and that is from the basis of NXT coming up.
Yeah, and I'm kind of Imperial's a huge favorite of mine, and I'm kind of sad to see the dissension of Vinci and Kaiser, because they were one of my favorite tag teams in the past couple years. But Walter in general, it's like people ask me now who's going to win the Rumble. I'm like, it's probably going to be Walter, or Gunther, excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall from a show from top to bottom, the 2 hours that they're allowed it, I believe NXT is the best WWE brand product of at least this year, because you can name a lot of different things that are going on. They may come at you very fast and often, but you can at least name a few things. Like I said, Raw, you just have Cody and Judgment Day carrying the 3 hours, and SmackDown it was Bloodline.
Yeah. Well, that is going to be where we kind of wrap it up for 3 count. We're not going to get to a 3rd count because we kind of did a little time limit.
What was the 3rd count? The CEO is not here on the show today, so we can go over. You're getting permission from me to go over. So what's the 3rd count? He's going to probably edit all this out anyway, but we'll still talk about it.
Moxley
and Phoenix, and real
quick, it was a learning experience. We'll go back to Tony. I think Tony Khan's going to need a lot of learning experiences, and unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but it's the fact that sometimes the learning experience may be a severe injury in the ring, because you need to know what's going to happen, and you need to learn from that. We've seen, while it wasn't severe, we've seen Enzo Amore get thrown to the bottom rope and get knocked out in the middle of a match, and they stopped it live on Raw. You get mad when WWE Samoa Joe takeover, he's bleeding like crazy, and they cut away, or even Kevin Owens most recent pay-per-view, he's bleeding like crazy, and likely WWE has enough cameras where they can cut to other parts, and while the medical team is working on the talent at the time and so forth. I think Moxley was a learning experience for Tony Khan. I hope he learned how to handle situations like this second by second. Hopefully his referees are smart enough at this point to know to call it as a shoot. If they say, if the talent tells you this is it, you got to count that 3. You can't
But they could have learned that from Matt Hardy. Sammy Guevara.
Yeah, there's a lot of things they could have learned, but they haven't. So we're hoping this time with his top star as a champ and doing an audible of having the title change hands, that's not planned. Hopefully he has learned at this point, and next time, because there are going to be next times, and hopefully next time it goes a lot smoother. It sucks for Mox. Mox goes out there and he gets a bad rap for doing all the indies and doing all the blood, and it sucked because it was cool for the past 2-3 weeks, however long he's held the title. All the Shield members were holding belts in the company in their companies right now. So that's one thing that from NXT, the Shield all champions right now, even though 2 of them were already talent before the Shield. But it was interesting. I didn't see the match. I've obviously saw the clips and originally thought that the pile drivers were the cause, and I still haven't seen the move that was actually the cause. But it's going to be interesting. Hopefully no international tours soon, because I guess Phoenix can't really travel. So
yeah. The international champion that can't go internationally.
Yeah. But we'll see where things go.
More learning for Tony.
What he does with the title coming up.
But that brings up a good question, Rob, and that is simply this: Rey Fenix. All right. The question is, that style. It's high flying. It's exciting for fans, but it's also extremely dangerous. And it goes both ways, not only for the talent, who's executing the move, but the talent who's taking it.
And it's not just him. Commander's doing the run across the ropes. There's a lot of guys who are putting in that level of work. Hijo de Vikingo is performing at that level. And if I could just get that level of performance in the ring with some well-written stories and marry the two, you have something unbeatable there. As far as NXT goes, I have such a hard time watching it. I tuned in and they had some guys dressed up like the Matrix sitting on the back of the bleachers.
Come on, man. That's the metaphor. That's Noam Dar and his crew. What are you talking? Some guys. That's the metaphor.
They were boring. It was stupid.
Boring. Come down,
childish.
Come down to Orlando and be my guest. Come down to Orlando and be my guest to NXT. You got to come down now. The metaphor is far from boring. They're the most entertaining thing on NXT right now. They're better than the someone and their mom.
That's
their mom driving them in the van to the ring.
I find that funny. I find that more entertaining than the guys doing a 20-year-old bitch.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Oh my God!
I haven't done this in forever, but there's the mute.
Yeah, can we mute this guy?
Steve, you know what? John brought up a great point here, and this is what I'm getting.
No, he didn't.
Vikingo apparently got injured so bad that he's in a wheelchair. You can't be extreme every second of the match. And the problem right now is that with that luchador style, it's gotten so extreme because everything is about clips. And that's the problem. You can say how bad a gimmick is, but the problem is the fact that if you're unsafe in the ring because you're trying to execute shit that people are going to talk about, then you're going to run the risk of injuring people on a regular basis. And I think that gets overlooked with the difference in style now. Strong style, ironically enough, I believe is safer than luchador style.
Yep. Yeah, and you really make a good point there. The one thing that I would kind of caution you on is, it's not just lucha. It's
become a hybrid.
It's this belief that people are going to do absolutely anything they can to get noticed. And, we've seen it over the last 5 years. I mean, that stuff's been happening at an exponential rate, higher than ever before. But the mere fact is that, yes, professional wrestling, and, if you've listened to this show, you've heard me say on numerous occasions, Dynamite feels like Crash TV, and it feels like as if they're trying to recreate something from a time gone by. I think that you have a show, a brand that, quite frankly, facilitates that and is going to elicit that type of a response that the viewer is going to expect everything to be crash TV. You know, when one match ends, the other match is starting and people are coming to the ring. You know, there's no time to let anything breathe. I am very, very optimistic that the changes that they've made with Collision, I'm hoping that those start to bleed into Dynamite. The problem that could easily be pointed to with something like that is going to be ratings. People aren't watching Collision, yet it's the best show on AEW's programming for the week consistently. And quite frankly, it's the best paced show that actually does the best job of attempting to get the people on it over. And we've talked about how the writing teams, or that the people that have creative input are different between the two shows. I don't want to say that I want both shows to be exactly alike, but I do wish that would be one thing that Tony Khan would take over to Dynamite, is letting things breathe, not be so focused on just crash TV and, well,
Agreed.
Let's fucking throw it on the wall and see what sticks.
Travis, does it come down to this? And that is simply that a super kick party needs to fucking go away. Because the EVPs, I mean, a lot of this centers around their thought process and style.
I'm going to surprise everyone and say no. What I think is that if you're EVP, that's your job and nothing else. You're no longer allowed to walk through that curtain, because the one thing everyone bitched about Hunter when he got an office position was that, well, he's still beating people in the ring and he's still doing this. And I'm sure some of the people who are EVPs in another company are the same people that yelled at Hunter for being an office employee, but still having a talent contract and not losing to people, or, burying people. I think if you're EVP in a company that has been struggling the past 12 months, and whatever aspect of struggling you want to stick on to wherever, I think they should no longer walk through the curtain. I think they should worry about what's going on backstage. I think they should run their wrestling organization and make it to what they want it to be.
Well, that's what CM Punk was talking about, in essence, was he not?
To what it started out as, you can manage a target, but most likely you're not going to be running the register, because you've hired people to do that for you.
Right.
So I think they need to focus on being EVPs, learn the process of being an EVP, and then you can walk into Hollywood. You can walk into sports events. You can walk into all this shit where you see other sports entertainers at, and say, I'm an EVP of this company, because this is what I know, and I'm not just out here in my $500 Jordans with thumbtacks on the bottom, So I think they should learn, and so, because I respect those two the most. I respect them a lot. Like I said, I've personally have known the Bucks. I mean, I'm not saying we're best friends or anything, but I've known them for a long time when they were in a skating rink in Victorville, and to see where they're at now, it's nothing but respect for them. Nothing but respect for them. So much respect that, there's things that WWE does. It's because they see AEW is has their fingerprint on certain things. Most currently will be tomorrow night when Raw's in Ontario, California. Not a real major market for Raw. It's gotten TV shows before. But we know what company has been running more TV out of Ontario in the past, 3 years than, a certain other company. So WWE saw that there's an audience there, and WWE ran Ontario before AEW did, but to get a very hot product at this point, instead of going another 40-50 minutes to Anaheim or LA, it says a lot. And AEW is part of that reason. But yeah, I think the Bucks need to focus, and even if it means Omega has to focus because he's the EVP, if he has to step away and learn that EVP, maybe step away, learn what it takes, what it means to be EVP. And if you're Kenny Omega, maybe you have time to work on this video game, you know, and so forth like that. You know, you can't be an EVP and a wrestler and a video game developer. You know, we saw how that doesn't work out. So there's a lot they can do. There's a lot they're going to do, but they, like I said, for me, it's just weird. It's just weird how house shows are doing better attendance. Like I said, I don't care about the ratings. I mean, they've hit their peak in ratings. Their ratings is about 865, you know, each week. They went into Saturdays knowing what was going to happen in the fall. No different than WWE going into the fall on Monday nights. So, yeah, they just need to focus on being EVPs, being the best EVPs, and being executives and not friends. I'm sorry, we may be friends, you know, growing up, maybe a friend because I got you this job, but once you sign that contract, I'm your fucking boss. I'm not your friend.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm your boss, and this is a wrestling organization, and you know what we do here. You know why we need to do this here, and you know what you need to do. And if you can't do it after a year or 2 years, we're gonna have to figure out what's going on. You know, do we use the option of a 30-year on your contract, or we just wish you the best? So
yeah,
that's life, because I'm sure everyone would want to be Vince McMahon's friend. I'm sure everyone wants to be.
Wait, I don't know if everyone wants to be Vince McMahon's friend right now.
Well, if you work there, you do. You know, whether you want to publicly admit it or not. You know, I don't know if Ari Emanuel. I don't know if a lot of people. I don't. You know, I'm sure everyone wants to be his friend, but at the end of the day, he's a business person, and now it's a business company, and you know, we'll see. You know, Ari has a client who is headed to WWE. You know, and I'm sure they're friends, but at the end of the day, she's his client.
Right.
And we're going to see what they can do with a star who is bigger than wrestling itself. But she's finally coming to WWE, and we'll see what's going to happen.
And that's going to be fucking amazing. And
I just want to know, like, what name is she going to use? There's already Jade in the company.
Right.
Is Corey gonna lose her last name?
Well, if anyone could,
priorities.
You just call her Cora. Pretty easy. But
I hope we're not speaking about Cora next week, but it's a different story.
Facts.
Well, just let me know when the tape comes out with her and Braun. All right, everyone. We're gonna just wrap it up here. Final thoughts, Rob.
I can't wait for Jade to come in, Jade Cargill to come in the company, and I hope she skips NXT. I said it, and I'll stand on that hill. Skips NXT, get past that hump, and just go straight to the promised land. And I'm so looking forward to that. As for me, you can catch me this week. I'll be performing at the 18 Bin on Tuesday at 9:00. I'll be performing and doing my whole Trump get up, and you can catch me at Boss Comedy on Instagram.
There you go, Sin City Steve.
All right, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all the stuff that you guys do. We appreciate each and every one of you. Very special thank you to all the brave men and women serving this country, whether you're doing it on lands foreign or domestic. Thank you for doing what you do so that we can do what we love to do. And last but not least, repsports.com, reppsports.com. Go there for all your pre-workout, weight loss, general energy needs. Again, that's repsports.com. Use promo code Vegas at checkout. Save yourself 15%.
And Travis, final thoughts.
Is Daryl going to allow this whole episode to air? Where's he at? No one explained to me where he's at today.
It's wifey's birthday.
So is he at the Lady Gaga concert?
Busted out the white fuzzy slippers.
Well, hopefully they had a. So she shares a birthday with Stephanie McMahon. Very interesting.
So yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah.
So he gets to be Hunter tonight.
He's checking that bank account.
To the bed, just go.
He's checking that bank account to make sure he can afford one more kid. But
I can't play that game.
but yeah, that is it. Good to be back on the podcast here, and I guess I'll ask where Rome is because he'll get a little mad if we don't ask. We're Simon Street. No one cares. Good. We didn't care anyway. So we can't say we didn't ask about it. But yeah, that's it. I don't think there's anything else. I forget my Instagram handle, so whatever. Find it somewhere. Rob, you're in Vegas?
Yes.
How long?
13 years.
No, wait, you live in Vegas? Wait, you live in Vegas? Oh,
yeah, I live in Vegas now. I'm a New Yorker, but I live in Vegas now.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk off air real quick because I'm in Vegas next week, and I'll tell you guys why.
There you go.
Cool.
All right. And if you all want to hear that conversation, you'll have to figure out how to tune in.
Join my OnlyFans. I don't have one yet, but you know,
$9.99 a month. You could see me doing all of my Trump stuff, just the wig.
Just the wig. Wait. Does the curtain match the drapes on that offer?
First of all, it is a beautiful curtain and beautiful drapes. The best drapes that you've ever seen. Believe it. Believe it.
All right, everyone. Until next week. Happy wrestling, everybody.